Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Social Origin Podcast. My name is Daniel and I am here with Ian. Is it pronounced Sypkes?
Yep.
Ian from Sanyou Baijiu?
Baijiu.
We're going to get into a lot of fun stuff today, and I can't wait to explain to you guys what Baijiu is and also learn more about your business, your company, and your story and the amazing difference and impact that you're making as you launch this new brand and this new business. So thanks so much for joining us, and let's dive right into it.
Welcome to the Social Origin Podcast. Together, we will explore culture, creativity, and business. This is a podcast for artists and entrepreneurs alike, a chance to listen to influencers and thought leaders in the US and Australia, focusing on where creativity, business, and culture intersect to make an impact for good. Our vision is to cultivate a community of innovative, socially conscious thought leaders. This is Social Origin.
So Ian, first off, would love to just learn a little bit more about yourself, your background, and then dive into your company, Sanyou.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. No, and thanks for having me. A bit of my background. I'm I guess third generation Tasmanian. My grandfather moved here when he was sort of in his 30s. And then, it's just sort of been a Tasmanian family since then. My personal background is I, straight out of school, went to university, did an engineering degree in civil engineering, and then worked as a civil engineer for sort of around 10 years, and then have pivoted across to starting Sanyou, and also bit of a family man. I've got a wife and 3 kids, little kids, 2 at school. And so that's what I spend my spare time doing, raising kids and having fun.
Legend. I love it. 3 kids at a young age. You're doing well. You're doing well.
That's awesome. Right. We went fast.
That's awesome. Well, first off, how did you decide to jump in to a new business, obviously working as a civil engineer, making that transition from engineering into, well, obviously what you're doing now, it's a form of engineering, but how did you decide to make that change?
Yeah, I think I'd always known I wanted to do something. Like I said, when my grandfather came over, he sort of immediately went into his own businesses. And so I've got this, lineage of people doing stuff, and I got to see how exciting that was. And so working as an engineer, I always had in the back of my head, I'd really like to get something happening, but you're sort of in a great position when you're working as a professional where you've got time and you've got time to come up with something that you think is innovative and a great business idea. So when I stumbled across Baijiu, it ticked all the boxes for me. It came up with the idea in 2018, the start of 2018. And by the end of that year, I'd been to China and was sort of full steam ahead on trying to get this thing happening.
Brilliant. Okay, so the age-old question: what is Baijiu?
Baijiu is a drinking spirit. So it's sort of like it would sit in the sort of same area as, say, vodka or tequila or something like that, except for it's the national drink of China. So to say you're going to have a drink in China often means you're going to have a Baijiu. The statistic is that Baijiu, in terms of revenue and volume, outsells whiskey, rum, tequila, gin and vodka all combined. Yeah. But us in the Western countries have almost never heard of it.
Yeah. I know for a fact I never heard of it until you introduced it to me. So super exciting, and especially with the capacity and the opportunity that's there to be able to really, reach people. I think it's fantastic. But then the next question would be, why Baijiu and why it in Tasmania, making it in Tasmania, making it in Australia? Like, how did you arrive at this point of like, this is something I'd love to get involved with?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, my initial thought was nobody's doing it. It was 2018. We had all these like a really active tourism industry in Tasmania and Australia. Yeah. And so my initial idea was make a really clean, traditionally made baijiu and sell it to the tourist market.
Yeah.
And that whole thing is just like evolved by itself. After going to China, I realized that this is more than just a drinking spirit. It's like baijiu means more in China than whiskey means to me in Australia. It's a cultural product. And so over time, it's really evolved into this concept of Chinese tradition and culture honoured in Tasmania. So it's really a reached out hand between Australia and China is how we look at the baijiu now.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things, as we were talking, earlier around the history and the culture and how it does affect Australian business specifically, is the concept of gifting and culturally gifting within business industry and the way business is done. Can you talk to that and how baijiu kind of fits in that mix a little bit?
Yeah. So while we were in China, we learned a lot. When I visited China, it was with one of my business partners, Tim, who's a Chinese-born, lives in Tasmania, and so he was really really good at bridging the gap in obviously the culture and the language and all of those things. And something that came across is baijiu is actually one of the top 2 gifts given in China.
Yeah, wow.
And so in a lot of circumstances, if you're meeting for a business meeting or family or friends or whatever, you would meet over a meal. Like they're very community and family oriented, and a lot of that orientation happens around a table. And in a traditional Chinese banquet style, all the food is shared. Yeah. And so you would have your center of food, and then closer to you, you'd have your baijiu and your glass of baijiu. And so it's really a product of connection. So, if you're going to have a business meeting with someone in China, you probably bring a bottle of baijiu with you and exchange it. And there's even sort of customs around a public exchange with the business to business, and then a behind the scenes person to person giving of gift. And so for us, it's become really apparent that if an Australian is doing a business with someone in China or with Chinese culture, to turn up with a bottle of baijiu is not just to say, here's something to drink. Yeah. It's to say, I've taken a minute to think about your culture, what I understand about your culture, and here's something that speaks of where I'm from, pure Tasmanian waters, Australian grains. And so it's really it's just this really interesting bridge that I honestly never thought that this would be where we ended up, but it's just how it's sort of played out. Where an exchange of Sanyou Baijiu is really a moment to bring honour into their relationship while trying to speak of Australia, our home. So it's really interesting dynamic.
Well, and I don't want to go off on a tangent too much, but turning attention to all of the tension that's happening right now around the world and between Australia and China and the U.S. and all the the whole political landscape where things seem to be escalating. It's really important now to, I think, understand and bring understanding. Can you speak a little bit to what you think about creating a time-honored tradition product from China and the importance right now?
Yeah, it's like I say, I came up with this concept in 2018. The world it's 20 years has happened in the last 4 years. And so, our baijiu is 100% traditionally made in Tasmania. And we follow the methods that we learned in central China. And so the deeper I get into baijiu is the deeper I get into Chinese tradition and culture, which is the deeper I get into what is different and what is the same. Yeah. And what I'm finding is the people are much more similar than we are different. We've got a lot of trade, a lot of relationships, a lot of family that are connected between Australia and China. And it's a really important thing. When COVID hit, the first person to send me a message was Meng Sheng, who's a friend of mine in China. And so all this sort of charge around political charges towards each other and all that kind of stuff, really sits at this high level. And then our real relationships are where we're sort of looking to, just continue them on. Like people are still trading. People are obviously still in friendships. People are still obviously in family. It's just a matter of keeping those connections alive and nurtured.
If you could talk to us a little bit more about the role you see Baijiu playing in really seeing that close to 1 million Chinese-born nationals living in Australia, the role that it plays in really welcoming them and inviting them to feel at home. Can you talk a little bit more to what you see, what that impact could be?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point because, like I said, my family's a migrant family. I've got uncles and aunties that were still born in Holland. And so we're sort of, I can see how my Dutch background has been sort of proliferated and accepted into Australia. And I don't 100% see the same thing with the Chinese or the Asian continent cultures. Like obviously we've got restaurants and if you look at the best foods that are in each town, a lot of them are Asian or Asian inspired or fusion and they've got this awesome culture and tradition that's like, it's more than, it just blows your mind. It's like more than you can ever imagine. And it's like really deep. It's really rich. And so what we've tried to do is take a small segment of that and then give it a home here in Tasmania. Yeah. And my vision of Sanyou is to become not just a baijiu maker. It's to host events. It's to, it's got so much more depth than a Western New Year is Chinese New Year. Mind of, if we can grow this, I think we can really create, take what is really interesting and great about Chinese tradition and culture and honour it in Australia. Yeah. And that's great for everybody because, like I say, like the best restaurants are, Chinese and stuff in town. Yeah. And so, like, if you take the best things from a really great and deep culture, I just think it's got endless possibilities. And, like, it's just something that I sense that there's a real interest from in the Australian community.
Yeah, I love that. And for us here at the Social Origin podcast, we're actually all about culture, creativity, and business. And so one of the things I love about your story and the journey that you're on right now is you're endeavoring to create something that's truly innovative, and you're endeavoring to create something that appreciates culture in a very, very unique way, so much so that you're willing to invest and also really just, I guess, put a stake in the ground to say this is something that's substantial, that matters. Can you talk to us a little bit about innovation and the role that innovation has played in this whole experiment and journey for you so far?
Yeah. So like initially when I was looking at making a spirit, I just went down the road of, okay, how are other spirits made? How do people make whiskey in Tasmania? How are people making gin in Tasmania? And then started assembling all the information on how baijiu can be made. And it's to say baijiu in China is to say wine in Europe. It can mean so many different things, a sparkling wine, a red wine. It's all different processes. And so is the same with baijiu. Like the input ingredients can be different. The methods can be different. But because we were really interested in what is the traditional method, we went down the track of looking at what they call solid state fermentation and distillation, which is reasonably unique in baijiu, but is sort of roughly similar in other Asian countries. Like if you're making sake, it can be solid state and fermentation. So it's, so for us to learn how to make baijiu, we got through most of 2018. And I had the method written down in front of me. I knew exactly what to do. I couldn't get it happening.
Wow.
And so we traveled to China, sort of cleaned up what we had wrong in our process and had a look at how they were doing things. and arrived back from China super stoked that we were going to be able to do it, and still couldn't do it.
Wow.
And so that's when we brought in our third partner, which is actually Chris DeBono, and he's a fermentation sort of expert. He makes miso in his own business, and he sort of unlocked the science for us in what is a process that can be described to us easily in a method.
Yeah.
He sort of unlocked the science behind what each step of that method means. And so, yeah, we've managed to, we think we've been trying to look around and see if anyone else is doing it, solid state fermentation, distillation with no imported materials. And we think we're the first ones to do it outside of China, which is, it's super exciting.
Yeah.
And what it means is the Baijiu that comes out of our process is distinctly Tasmanian.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like the first time we see liquid, it is actually Baijiu coming out of the still.
Yeah.
Like the rest of the time, it's all just on cooked grains. So
Fantastic.
it's been a real big journey. And I have people reaching out to me quite often with, oh, yeah, I've been thinking about doing Baijiu. How do you do it? And I'm like, that took me 4 years to figure out. I'm happy to
And also quite a bit of trial, error, and investment and everything else.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a big risks. Like we ordered the equipment, like, obviously, we had to keep everything moving, so we've ordered all this full-size equipment directly from China. Each fermentation is 6 ton of grain, which is a big investment in itself. I'm happy to help people. I'm happy to discuss it with them, but it's not a matter of changing your gin process to a whiskey, to a Baijiu process. If you're going to do it traditionally solid state, it's all custom equipment.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work.
Wow. No, hats off to you, honestly. Like like you've taken the leap, and I'm so excited for the journey so far. I think it's absolutely brilliant. But can you tell us a little bit more about Sanyou and where the name originated from?
Yeah, so the Chinese language is very difficult. Yeah. It's really symbolic. And so there's lots of ways of saying the same thing using different characters, or saying different things using the same characters. It's a really complicated language from a Western point of view. From an English point of view, it's very complicated. I'm sure they come back and look at English and think that makes no sense as well. So Sanyou itself is the pinyin translation of effectively 3 friends. And so for us, that represented initially 3 founders. I've got myself, Tim Yee, who's based down in Hobart, and then Chris DeBono, who's based up here in Launceston with the fermentation expertise. But it also speaks to our process. There's the fermentation, distillation, and aging, which is what really makes us unique, is those 3 distinct things. Our fermentation is one of a kind. Our distillation is the Chinese traditional kind, and we're doing the first clay pot aging outside of China. It also speaks to our ingredients. We've kept it really simple and traditional. We learnt in the tradition of the Maotai style, which is a town in central China, which makes the most famous brand, which is literally Maotai. Yeah. And so we only have 3 ingredients. It's wheat, which makes our chew, red sorghum, which is our bulk grain, and then it's just water in the form of steam, effectively. And then it also, for us, just speaks a relationship in general. Like, our ultimate goal is someone from Australia meeting with someone with either Chinese heritage or from China, meeting together over a bottle of Baijiu. And that's that triangle again. It's sort of that just that vision of the relationship.
Yeah. I love that. No, I think that's fantastic. No, well done. And Ian, thank you so much for taking time out to come on the Social Origin podcast to share your story.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait to get my hands on a bottle and we'll review that and check it all out as well. So it'll be sweet. Thanks so much.
No, thanks for having me. It's pleasure.
Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to stay up to date for everything that's coming up on the Social Origin podcast. We'll see you soon.